Welcome to Business Analysis Techniques. Again, this is your online instructor, Diana Block, and I'm going to be looking at Unit 4. And in Unit 4, we're going to use Solver. And this is a tool that I had you install into your Excel. It's an add-in. And I had you install that week 1, and you did one practice problem using Solver, but we didn't really talk about what it is or how it solves problems for you. So we're going to do that this week. I also want to encourage you to, in addition to this video, watch all of the videos in the additional learning resources area here. If you have any problem at all using Solver, these will help you because it'll walk through several problems step by step. I want to start off though with our problems for the class so that you can see exactly how the tool applies to the specific problems that you're working on. So I'm going to go straight to that. So this is a copy of the homework assignment sheet that you have downloaded for this Unit 4. And you have some information in this blue paragraph, and each problem is like this. Make sure you review the information in the blue paragraph very carefully. This is going to give you the data you'll need to solve this problem. So I'm going to go through this with you. It tells us that this company makes 2 products, and what they want to do is maximize their profit. They want to create the right combination of products, the right combination of air conditioners and fans, so that they're maximizing profit. Each of these products has a different profit value that's associated with it. The paragraph tells us that air conditioners have $25 profit each. Fans have $15 profit each. So you might think, well, that's pretty easy. Just create more air conditioners because they have more profit. We don't know that that's necessarily the case because there's some constraints involved as well. Each of these products requires wiring time and drilling time. And that time is at a constraint. We only have so much of it. And we also have a minimum number of each product that we have to make in order to meet our customer demands. So we need to use Solver to help us figure out how many of each product that we should actually create so that we can maximize our profit figure. So let's add in our constraints. Our constraints are wiring and drilling based on the paragraph. And according to the paragraph, each air conditioner requires 3 hours of wiring time. Each fan requires 2 hours of wiring time. Each air conditioner requires 2 hours of drilling time, and each fan requires 1 hour of drilling time. And so we need to find out what our total wiring times are and our total drilling times are. So what we can do here is equal sum product, and sum product just means it's going to multiply a section times a section. So what we've done here is we've said sum product, the number of fans and air conditioners we're going to produce, times the wiring and drilling time for each. That way, once Excel tells us how many to produce here, it'll automatically calculate how much total wiring time that's going to take. We're going to do the same thing for drilling. We're going to say sum product, and we're going to sum product the number of units we're going to produce times the drilling time. So then in this field, we'll end up with the total drilling times once Excel determines how many of each unit to produce. And so what do we know about these wiring and drilling times? We've got a maximum. Wiring and drilling, we have a wiring first, we have a maximum of 240 hours available to do that. So what I'm saying here is whatever this total wiring amount of time is, it needs to be less than or equal to 240 because that's all the time that we have for wiring. And then the drilling time needs to be less than or equal to 140. According to the paragraph, we only have 140 hours that we can dedicate to drilling. So whatever the result of this formula ends up being, it needs to be less than or equal to 140. We can't have it go over that. We also need to put in our profit here. So since each fan has $15 profit and each air conditioner has $25 profit, we'll need to multiply those amounts times the number of units we're going to produce so that we can calculate our total profit, which is the number that we're going to maximize. Okay, so we have our formula for profit in. We have our objective functions, which is the profit for each unit. We've got our constraints in. We are ready to go to Solver for this problem. So to use Solver, we go to the Data tab, Solver, and here's our Solver dialog box. So set objective. This is the number that we're trying to minimize or maximize. Our set objective is in cell D5. This is where we have our profit formula. So we want to set that to the maximum. So on a future problem, we might click minimum because we're trying to minimize something. But in this case, we're talking about profit and we want to maximize that. So how are we going to maximize profit? We're going to maximize profit by changing these cells, by changing either the number of air conditioners or the number of fans. We want Excel to alter those fields until it finds us the amount of each one that's going to maximize profit. And this is subject to these constraints. So we do have some constraints. So we're going to add constraints. Our first constraint is that this wiring, this field D8 that has the total amount of wiring, has to be less than or equal to 240. This field has 240 in it, so that's one constraint. We're going to add that. Now we have another constraint, is that this drilling field, D9, has to be less than or equal to 140. So those are our two constraints. We have our constraints in, and so now we can click Solve, and Excel Solver will solve this problem for us. And it will fill in, I'm not going to do it because it's part of the homework, it will fill in this amount, how many air conditioners, how many fans, how much profit that will create, and then our formulas here will calculate how much wiring and drilling time that's going to require, and it should be based on the constraints we enter, it's going to be less than 240 here and less than 140 here. So that's how you use Solver. You get your sheet set up, enter your profit figures if that's what you're working with, enter your formula for profit, enter all of your constraints, make sure you have your sum product formulas here so you can get the totals on your constraints and what it needs to be compared to. Then you go to Solver and you enter the objective that you're trying to set, whether you're trying to maximize or minimize it, which cells to change in order to maximize that figure. Enter your constraints, click Solve, and then there's another box that'll come up that'll say, do you want to keep that solution? And you'll say yes. And that is how you will use Solver. So on each one of these problems, you've got a similar situation. In this one, you've got 800 hours of labor is your constraint. And you're trying to balance between these two types of machinery. And in this one, you also have a minimum amount of each item that you have to produce. I'm going to go ahead and look at this one as well. So you'll read the paragraph and you're going to find out that it says that there is $1,400 profit per alpha, $1,800 profit per beta. So you're going to enter a sum product formula here to multiply whatever ends up being our number of units times the objective function of profit amounts. So that's that part. Now you're going to enter the constraints. We have a constraint. You're going to read it when you read the paragraph that says labor. There's only so much labor available. Each alpha requires 20 hours of labor. Each beta requires 25 hours of beta. So we're going to do a sum product formula here to get the total amount of labor that's being spent on creating these products. That labor amount needs to be less than or equal to 800. That's up in this paragraph. We've only got 800 hours with which we can do labor. Now, this problem is different from the first one in that there's some minimums. So I'm going to show you those. The problem says that this company requires that at least 10 alphas and at least 20 betas be produced. So we want to maximize profit, but also we have to create at least 10 of the alpha product and at least 20 of the beta products. So that's another constraint. So I'm just going to enter those two minimums here. I'm not going to add them up. I'm not going to do a less than or equal to here because I'm going to do this one different, and I'll show you why, and it'll make sense. So this is ready to go to solver. I've got all my formulas in. Yes, I'm going to go to solver, data, solver. And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to set objective is here, this profit, and I'm trying to maximize the profit by changing these cells, by changing the number of units. Now let's add our constraints. My first constraint is that this labor number has to be less than or equal to 800. So I'm going to add that constraint. Now, my other constraint is that there needs to be at least 10 alphas. So here's how I'm going to do that. The number of alpha products that I'm going to make is going to end up here. So what I'm telling Excel is that this number needs to be greater than or equal to 10. I'm just going to tell solver that. So whenever solver, whatever you come up with for alphas, it needs to be at least 10 of those. And I'm going to add that constraint. Then I'm going to say for betas, Excel, however many betas you come up with for me, it needs to be greater than or equal to 20. So let's look at our constraints. Oh, one of them's not in there. I must not have saved. So see, I've got, oh, let me fix that. I've got my cell in here of the objective function I'm trying to maximize by changing. I've got that in there. I've got that there needs to be at least 10 in B4 and that D8 has to be greater than F8. So I've got that. I need to add my constraint about the betas. I didn't save that somehow. So my betas need to be greater than or equal to 20 of those. Okay, so now I have all three of my constraints in there. My constraints are that I need to have at least 10 alphas, I need to have at least 20 betas, and that I have to have labor of less than 800 hours, no more than 800 hours of labor. And so then I could click solve here. And then on the next box, say keep the solver solution, and Excel will then go through and fill in the number of each item that we should create in order to meet this constraint of less than 800 hours and maximize profit. So that's how you're going to use Excel for each of these problems. You'll just follow that same type of format that I gave you here. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact me, send me an email. We can discuss it in the discussion area if you like. And I wish you a great week.